Wszystko zaczęło się od króla Jagiełły. Mała Łodzia stała się miastem, które w XIX wieku rozwijało się najszybciej na świecie. W ciągu zaledwie 60 lat od powstania pierwszej manufaktury powstaje przemysłowa, wielonarodowościowa metropolia. Jednak wiatry historii nie zawsze jej sprzyjały. To, co zniszczył los, odbudowują łodzianie. Nasza Łódź. Miasto wielkich szans. Od 600 lat w sercu Polski i Europy.
Jesteśmy Polakami. Jesteśmy niezwykłym społeczeństwem. Zawsze w obliczu wielkiego wyzwania potrafimy się mobilizować. Potrafimy stawić czoła wielkim wyzwaniom. Bo nie potrafimy stać obojętnie. Bo obchodzi nas bezpieczeństwo i przyszłość naszych dzieci. Bo wierzymy, że nadzieja zwycięża apatię, lęk i strach. Bo mimo wszelkich przeciwności nigdy się nie poddajemy. Potrafimy ciężko pracować, wspierać się i działać razem. Bo zależy nam na naszej ojczyźnie, naszym osiedlu, naszej ulicy. Bo chcemy naszych niezbywalnych praw i wolności. Bo nie oddamy naszych marzeń. Nadchodzi punkt zwrotny.
Dzień dobry.
Good afternoon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dominika Wielowieyska. I work for Wyborcza Journal and Talk FM station. I'm really glad that you joined us, and today with us are Andrzej Domański, Chief Economist of the Civic Institute, Financial Markets Analyst, Maciej Herman, Lotte Wedel, Managing Director, and in fact almost co-host Adam Pustelnik, First Deputy Mayor of the City of Łódź. My suggestion for you is to try to tackle at least 3 problems, and I thought that perhaps last time of our meeting can be left for questions from the audience, if there will be questions. I have a couple of them, but I would like to see you also participating in this debate. And the first point that we agreed upon is to say about this turning point. How Polish economy looks now, what about debt limit. We could hear many times from economists the announcements of financial catastrophe, public finances disaster. It did not happen. Perhaps we don't have a full knowledge about our finances. And the question about increasing disproportion in public finances. How about low perspective with this public debt can be smashing burden for us, and what about crossing the limits established in the Constitution? Since we hear so many propositions from different political parties, and their propositions are very expensive, and we are not sure how new power, if of course there will be a new power, we can't be sure how they will manage these challenges. Also, EU funds are also disputable. We don't have money from main budget, and it's still not certain if we look at the statements of EU representatives. If Andrzej Domański can comment on that, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation. Perhaps let's start from the rapid view on Polish economy. First and second quarter GDP is negative, the biggest deterioration in European Union. Indicators of Polish industry shows impediment. Inflation still 2 digits. Is that a fault of Putin? Perhaps in part, but Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia are also influenced by invasion in Ukraine, but their inflation is twice smaller. It's third worst day in the history of Polish currency during last decade, after the decision of cutting the interest rates. Economy is in poor condition, and economic policy is done by people extremely irresponsible, both when it comes to fiscal policy and monetary policy. And of course the question about a budget for 2024. The gap in the budget is increasing to 24% if we compare to previous year. Loan needs almost 200 trillion of zlotys and 2 billion zlotys of public debt. It's the conditions for September 2023, and this is something a new power will have to face after the winning in the election, after democratic opposition wins in the election. Prime Minister Morawiecki is a real master when it comes to using numbers in a way to give credibility to their policy, like this famous narrative of public debt compared to GDP, which is influenced by inflation. So in a nutshell, the condition of public finance looks bad. We don't know how exactly, because we have a really small transparency of public expenses. A huge amount of these expenses was taken outside of the parliamentary control. It turns out that we will have to pay Korean suppliers $16 trillion for equipment built, and we find out that from Korean newspaper. That shows the scale of this madness. I'm using this word when we say about our current team. Can I ask you one question? Of course, current power is defending in a way that still the proportion of debt to GDP is lower as compared to the other countries, also in EU, and it's not critical. Isn't it that the opposition is overheating this subject shortly? I recorded quite popular short movie about this indicator. How is it possible to manipulate this indicator, and how it was done if nominal GDP is increasing, since there is very high inflation? Then the debt is increasing significantly. The percentage of our debt, we will spend 70 trillion zlotys. That's more than program 800 plus costs. So I'm far from saying that we are in a agonal condition. Polish economy is not in agonal condition. I think that similar voices in the past were not justified, but we need to understand the risks that are definitely present. Mr. President, Adam Pustelnik, please. Can I hear the question, or should I respond to the same context as colleague? Yes, I wanted to ask about public finances, how self-governments managed in these conditions, also without money from National Recovery Plan. Additional questions. Pavel Borys, Chief of National Development Organization, says that projects of investments that are inscripted into National Restoration Plan, the funds are somehow inscribed, and then in some way we will arrange funds from EU. Well, the same situation. I can't add too much new things, but I have a little bit different opinion about the diagnosis. I am not one of the supporters of this non-debt policy that is lobbied by people working in the economy. I would like to share one quotation of Kazimierz Górski to be a base of my position. He would say that it's better to stand still like a fool instead of running around like a stupid person. From perspective of our public finances and generally looking at our economy, in this case, say one political fiction, world without boundaries, say change of the government, less radical and accepting the national recovery plan and doing nothing, just observing the situation, would already be a huge qualitative change and strategic level change. It would lead to, I mean, everything indicates that. You need to remember that economy is not a concrete science, but many indicators would drop, just like investment credibilities. I am responsible for inflow of external investments in our region, and most often questions are not about public support, some reliefs and so on. The first question is, how about rights of LGBT persons? Why in Łódzkie Voivodeship we had couple areas free from LGBT? What do you think about equality of women? And why do you have so strange energy mix? Only next we hear questions about indicators, because other elements that are still quite exotic, ESG reporting or the role of declared system value is huge. It's enough to go to London or New York during Pride Week, and every second logo of the company is with the rainbow colors. So this ideology of the company, not only in soft extent, but it's harmful for us. And when it comes to the limit of the debt, I don't think it's a matter that would be a deal breaker. And I'm explaining why. Even the smartest macroeconomists and digit experts are not sure what is the debt of United States. This amount is so huge that no one can actually understand that. Germany would use similar funds for very huge scale. Many elements of economy stimulation are used by different economies. I'm not saying it's an optimal model and that it is good, but I'm saying that it is used by many places that are more developed than us. So this fetishism of small debt should be our least problem, our least worry. We have much bigger ones. For instance, Bulgaria is the country that has the least proportion of public debt to GDP, but with all due respect, I would not change places with them. So our credibility in the market, not accepting the National Recovery Plan, our ideological narration towards global society, international organizations, is more harmful from perspective of economy. Centralization that takes place almost every day than the debt issues. And I have perhaps different view than colleague Domański, because I would like to underline once again, this is not a specific science. Stiglitz and Friedman had different views on that, and each of them received Nobel Prize. So my suggestion is to hear Mr. Maciej Herman, and then we will do a second round, and you will refer to each other's statements. Please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am personally much closer to Mr. Domański when it comes to my view on economy. I am an economist similarly as Mr. Domański, so I will not add anything to his statement. But referring to previous statement, I would like to say that Poland is not neither USA nor Germany, so these comparisons are not adequate, I think. Just like comparison with Japan's debt, the situation is different than in Poland, but from the perspective of enterprises, businesses, because I think I can say the most about this perspective. We look at Polish economy, unfortunately, as I can call it, is a dropping line. Unfortunately, this direction of change is very negative, having in perspective, not regarding further years, but just perspective of couple months, political perspective of nearest months. So the goal of being this wealth in Poland is not visible in goals of our ruling party. This well-being should be a goal, and we are not closer to that, we are even farther. Honestly saying, I do not... I think that a new government will have a huge problem to tackle the increasing inflation. We will have somehow to increase taxes or somehow balance the state budget, so to avoid the fate of second Greece, or not to have the inflation on the level of Turkey. What we can see looking on indicators, Mr. Domański said about GDP, what we can see is dropping consumption from month to month. If in previous years, in many categories, it was still positive, right now almost every category, whether it's food, household chemistry or other sectors, they are negative. And from month to month, this ratio, as compared to the previous year, is getting deeper. So it's definitely negative. So therefore, after that, we will have a drop in production. So it's one of the purely economic elements. Of course, there are different issues. I agree with Mr. Mayor, liberty, LGBT questions, but also how we purchase energy in our country, how energetic transformation, or if it's not done, what is the condition of this transformation, which would lead to much higher costs of the energy as compared to our Western neighbors. That makes our economy less competitive compared to Western ones, and export for our industry and for our economy is very important. The costs related to minimum salary, it's related to the level of inflation. All that creates a huge challenges for the enterprises, for businesses. We don't see the increase of redundancy, but there are other indicators related not to such a great managing of our country, but we have less people working than 10 years ago. That's the reason. So generally, I am an optimist, but I can't say that I am an optimist for next year or two. It would be a really difficult task for a ruling party now, but definitely I hope that finally we will have a team that will have a plan to improve economic situation, not some other priorities.
In a moment, I'll hand over to Andrzej Domański, but I have a word of comfort to you. If the Democratic Opposition wins the elections, Adam Glapiński and his colleagues in the Monetary Council will twist the screw so that we will cry. His perspective would change and will control the inflation. But generally, the Monetary Policy Council is highly controlled by politicians. It's a politician's order game rather than following what the Constitution says about it. Well, thesis has been assigned to me, I do not claim. I don't think that the public debt is the greatest challenge before Polish economy. It is unquestionably the diminishing competitiveness of Polish economy, enormous prices of energy for Polish business. In July, energy price for Polish companies was 50% higher than in France or Germany. That only shows how it is difficult for Polish companies. This institutional collapse that hits running businesses in Poland. Well, we heard it from the mayor. In 2015, almost 20% of Poles declared they were thinking about opening their own businesses. Now it's less than 3%. That only shows how the revolution of the Polish deal, or the revolution in approaching Polish entrepreneurs in the past years, the development of the repressive state against businesses, reduces the number of people willing to take the risk of their own businesses, which for the long-term economic development is disastrous. Well, I wanted to smoothly move to investments, which are clearly related to the status of public finance. And then I wanted to discuss energy transition, which is the foundation for building competitive economy. But there are a few items here. On the one hand, we keep hearing that investments to GDP are low. Mateusz Morawiecki promised 25%. It's about 17. I'm quoting from my memory. Sorry for any mistake. But it was equally low before the pandemic, before the war, just to make things clear. Maciej Herman mentioned consumption. The members of the Monetary Council said it's going down because it was driven by Ukrainian migrants. But generally, the key driving force for the GDP growth was consumption rather than investments. On the other hand, we keep hearing, and the mayor will elaborate on that, tendencies have changed in investing, which means, to make it simple, the Germans prefer to withdraw their businesses from Germany and make it in Poland, because the tendency is that we invest and build in neighboring friendly states. I meant they are withdrawing their investment from China. And Poland earned on that, indeed, was what I see from friendly entrepreneurs. But let's talk a moment about it. Why the investment ratio against GDP is so low? Why the plan, the Prime Minister's plan failed? And foreign investments that come to Poland anyway. Mr. Mayor, well, let's go one step backwards. I must have misinterpreted your words. If after the 15th of October there is a change, celebrations in my home would last a month. But the point was that the current situation is bad. I only think we should look for its sources elsewhere than what you said. Why did it fail? For the very first time, the public sector and public authority is imperfect by definition. But for the first time, the whole policy is subjected to political goals of a single party. And there is no such bright indicator as economic policy. You can see it's all adjusted to the political campaign of this party. Let me give you two examples. Today, if you ask 100 big business people, Mr. Herman included, what is the key factors that determine that it's good to make business in one place? One of those is stability and legislation culture. What happened 2 2 or 3 weeks ago in Poland, there was an amendment of export insurance. Obviously, under the pretense of law with common consensus, with a MP amendment without any commissions, there is a single sentence amendment of pharmaceutical law that turns their basis upside down. We only know it because the biggest employer in Łódź, Pelion, one of the biggest pharma distributor, they hired thousands of people in Łódź. The company Polish, starting from zero to hero. Overnight, the rules of the game change upside down. Nobody knows why. No discussions, hidden elsewhere, and this is commonplace. This, plus the issue of values, destabilization of everything. The economic policy, despite certain background, the Prime Minister Morawiecki's CV, doesn't matter. There is not even fair discussion on it. His comment is the best evidence regarding the cutting down the interest rates. I almost crushed my car. I had to stop when I heard it. I couldn't hear what I heard. I couldn't believe what I heard. During a conference, somebody asked Prime Minister Morawiecki what was the logic behind this reduction by 75 basic points. There was 20-second pause, and the Prime Minister said, "Smiling Polish children are far more important to us than some numbers." That's the word of the bank man. Instability, subjecting everything to the current campaign makes the investment ratio as it is. It's a disaster. Poland used to be a champion. I had phone calls from global corporations willing to talk to grow in Poland. Now it's all dead. A vast number of our partners, because of all those rapid changes, declare they would go to different markets, different places. If you also add to the total collision of the system of values, we are in a very bad place, and our assumptions and examples which we used to develop are long gone. The Law and Justice claim that the foreign investments are incoming, numbers are satisfying. Mr. Herman, what really, in your opinion, makes the ratio of investment still very, very low and no symptoms of its moving up? And when peace took the power, it was about 20%. What's been happening that despite this perfect economic conditions during their first term, 2015-19, the investments did not go up? Well, you heard part of the answer from the mayor. We have accessed various reports by foreign analysts who reviewed different markets, different countries, careful scorings, which country is better for investing, which is not. And unfortunately, our country doesn't look good due to various reasons. Obviously, the war in Ukraine contributes to that. We are right the neighbor of Ukraine, but in the longer perspective, it's first of all that tangled system, complex legal regulations changing all the time, not just before elections, but for 8 years we have been changing regulations day to day, minute to minute. Just remember the laws on that changed when COVID appeared. Apart from sweet development, we have a network of cafes and day before we learned we were supposed to close them the next day. Later on, day to day, we learned we should open them, how to get people, how to arrange. That's not the way you run businesses. The mayor mentioned that 3 weeks ago the pharma law changed. I thought you were talking about different regulations. At the same time, laws on reusable packaging, like plastic bottles, cans, etc., also changed. The pharma law changed by updating export insurance. Well, that's a well-known method to change regulations in Poland. And this is the same example, second example in the same time, more or less, that will affect producers of drinks in various packaging that rang a bell that it takes 2 years to 3 years to adjust companies and stores in Poland to enforce the law. That's how it works in the world. In Poland, they will come into force about 2025. That gives us 1 year and 3 months to get ready for that. Obviously, it's a standard in Poland. It's been a standard in Poland for some time. These regulations are not consulted with businesses, so they are introduced either like the export guarantee or with bad will. So, taking that all into account, uncertainty, inclarity, the introduced regulations are so confused, and we business people need to hire an army of consultants, legal, tax, so somebody can explain what it's all about, how to move in it, not to pay fines instantly, and you can read on a daily basis how huge corporations are fined with millions of zlotys. There are my customers, the retailers, because such regulations are subject to interpretation of an official. They are not black and white as they should be. Therefore, I could add more here, of course, but therefore an average analyst would say, well, you'd better invest elsewhere rather than in such an unstable place. Mr. Domański, well, a lot has been said. The instability of Polish law is obvious. The fact that the current authority can kill any sector in a couple of days by changing law is also clear, and we have evidence to that. That is why we have this request for 6 months vacation leges for new tax changes. Business people should have time to get the companies ready for such changes. We have spoken a lot about energy prices. I trust you need a lot and lots of goodwill and remarkable trust to invest in Poland, where we have 70% of energy generated from coal. So the carbon footprint for production is higher than in other European countries. Because of the same reason, energy is more expensive. It's truly hard to find any assets. And that worries me indeed, because competitiveness of Polish economy is deteriorating rapidly. On the other hand, we are observing processes like friendshoring, shoring, the changes of the global architecture. We see that the US is opting for economic protectionism. Poland can, in a long perspective, be a country for many investments, but we don't know how to play those good cards we have at hand, and we act below our potential. Well, I wanted to talk about energy transition because low energy price is the key for companies' competitiveness. My question is, how do you think, what is the essence of energy transition? What should we opt for? What are the effects of us not having money from the KPO, because we read a lot about green transition, I'm also interested in the projects, atomic power plants, nuclear power plants, though I find it hard to believe that you can build 3 nuclear projects. Every single one is so expensive, so I can't imagine running 3 of those. But your opinion, gentlemen, how should this green transition go, Mr. Mayor? Well, it should be happening now. Like many important issue, is the hostage of a current political dispute. The change of our energy mix results from a certain nostalgia for the past, and groups of electorates so vital for the current authority to some extent support or believe that high share of carbon in Polish economy is strategic, and that results directly from stances of different decision makers from the current authority who say Polish coal was, is, and will be the foundation for the Polish economy, which it sounds effective in the campaign, but considering what the declarations are from all countries, even those that used to have huge coal contribution in their energy mix, they are all cutting down on it, opt for solar, wind, or other renewable energy. In Poland, it's all hostage to the current debate before elections. There is no alternative to the dominating direction in the Western world. But not only China is decarbonizing, we so far have many industries like prosumers, photovoltaics, increasing the share of wind energy in our mix. They could be done simple. They do not require McKinsey analysis, or but they are the hostages to political discussion. The effects of not taking the National Recovery Plan, I will not go into numbers, but one of the effects is the weakening of our currency, weakening of our reliability. We do not take hundreds of billions that can be spent not on consumption but investments and development only for political reasons. There is nobody can defend the idea why we are not accepting it. That is why local authorities and public structures that were ahead of us due to historic reasons in Europe make progress, and we don't, because the assumption that we will pre-finance it and then make up for it, it's absurd unless we change. So you are back to Paweł Borys's words, but they are commonplace. We will pre-finance and then we will cover it somehow. There is no reason to believe we will cover it somehow without a change, because in none of the key items we've reached a consensus. It's absurd. Perhaps I may be a bit crazy about that. I'm a bit liberal, neo-Keynesist. There is a threshold. I believe it may be further than others do, but you can't do it forever. I can't remember the exact amount from the National Recovery Plan, but you can't make it from current spending and take loans for that. These are not complex issues in terms of logic, but they are subject to campaign, election campaign, and the current brutal campaign policy.
Andrzej Domański, please, from National Recovery Plan. This money are still waiting to inflow the Polish economy, but Polish government recently made another motion for debt financing. Yeah, but energy sector, completely key factor for competitiveness of Polish economy. How many and when we can earn on this transition, we will be able to increase to 60–80% in our energy mix. Renewable sources that will help us to reduce a natural gas consumption in 70%, and we can achieve that during 6–7 years. What that means for Polish economy: huge investment wave. I will paraphrase: for energy transition we have money, and there will be waiting. There are money in national recovery plans, there are European funds for energy transition. That is absolutely crucial for us. In the system there is a place for renewable energy and for nuclear energy, for which of course we need to wait some time. 3 huge-scale nuclear energy projects at a time, it's explicitly too much. We can discuss 2 perhaps, and there will be a place for SMR, which the technology was not anywhere implemented in a commercial way. So I will be gently cautious here. I would like to protect Polish energy sector and Polish economy. I wouldn't like to see us a museum, to change from museum of coal to museum of natural gas. Other countries in Europe resign from this source of energy. The war in Ukraine accelerated this process, but we can't see this tendency in our country. This is only 30, maybe 35% less than coal. So the natural gas is not any solution for us. In long perspective, nuclear energy and renewable energy in shorter perspective. Without that, there will now be serious investment in Poland. I said about these 3 nuclear programs. Then Mr. Morawiecki suggested that there will be some deal with France. Also, there is a program with Korea, and SMR is 4th program, which is not clear yet. So to put it mildly, question to Mr. Herman: how does it look like from perspective of a concern that has to deal with the costs, and how do we look as compared, benchmarked to other countries of European Union? Perhaps I will respond with the example from life from before a couple of months. Perhaps you know, I can suggest you that chocolate is first of all made from cocoa. It's imported, but instead of that we need sugar, butter and many other ingredients. But those are main ingredients of chocolate or candies. Or we are quite a big company in this sector. And to show you that, our company uses 1% of national production of butter to produce our products, our chocolates. We received a phone call a couple of months ago from our suppliers who informed us that in 2 weeks he is sorry, but he's closing the factory because the prices for energy are that high that it's not profitable for him anymore, and he has to close the company. The supplier that we worked with, I can't remember for how many years, and I'm sure not only we were working with him. So of course, in this situation, these frightened eyes, we had, well, but finances, energy. So what we managed to negotiate with that supplier is to produce 1 month, especially for us, this resource, because finding a next this scale manufacturer is not such easy task. We need to prepare to that. And this is a real life situation that happened to us recently. And I'm sure that this kind of situation does not happen only to us. So maybe this can be an indirect answer to this question. I'm not a specialist in energy, nuclear or renewable, but we need to remember about 2 aspects when we talk about economy. And here we have what Mr. Domański said in his previous statement about the price of energy in Poland, that it is higher than in Germany or other countries, which influences the competitiveness of our economy. But we need to remember about a key factor, so global warming, and about what happens with the weather, with the climate, with the wind, sun, and so on and so on. So basically this is the reason why we should not discuss if, but how. How should we do that as fast as possible? And this is the question that we lack somehow. We talk about economy, about miners, of course, we need to solve these questions, it's important, but there is no going back, and we need to openly communicate that. To explain the citizens about the responsibility in finding solutions. So we need to discuss how to do it as fast as possible. We don't have much time, but perhaps some of you would like to ask a question to our panelists. So please, you will have the chance. First was the gentleman here. Only please make your questions brief. We have little questions. Tomasz Kamiński, Łódź University. I wanted to ask, where do you see the chance for this turning point in the nearest future? Because energy transition, that can be a motor of this change, but it's also building knowledge-based economy, and our perspectives in these regards are very poor. We have fatal educational conditions, not enough financing for universities, and when I see 100 postulates of opposition party, there is nothing about research and development, scientific sector and future of that. So these perspectives look very thin. I would like to say about 100 first days of ruling. We have the whole package directed to the basic rudimentary schooling to restore dignity to teacher profession. And in the postulate, I'm not sure about the number, but I think it's number 51, we have the whole paragraph, 2 paragraphs related to higher education, autonomy of the universities and increasing the condition of education by new act. Because of course everyone complains that there is too few postulates about their sectors, but I can assure you that we are absolutely sure that the richness of the society comes from investments, innovatives and work. And we are sure that there can be no innovations without proper higher education founding and development of higher education. Can we achieve that during first 100 days? I'm sure not, but it will be our key task. Next question, would you like to add something? Okay, then. Next question. Piotr, your question actually was something that I believe many people would like to ask about. So, question about turning point to Andrzej Domański, or maybe for other participants. Other sectors, what would you suggest? For instance, entering the Eurozone, opening export for Ukraine, how will we unfreeze the investments? And question to Andrzej Domański. Radical elimination of taxes. It's not a turn in social economic policy. I do not wish to take your place, but yeah, I will be glad to hear. Well, about these 100 specific goals, we established tasks for first 100 days. I think that without radical acceleration of energy transition, we will not see the turning point in Polish economy. Polish economy can benefit from the postponing, as it looked like in IT sector, in energy sector. We can leap through certain stages and invest in the newest technologies in energy sector. In energetic sector, it should be done basing on the savings. We have the whole program directed to generating savings in Polish economy when it comes to relation between expenses and taxes in our program. So first of all, our program, amongst all other presented by political parties, is a smallest when it comes to expenses. It was presented by economists of Forum of Polish Development. They are here 2 floors under us. They are quite critical about your coalition. I'm speaking about the program, and if the majority of these expenses creates encouragement for work, if it's more profitable to work, well, the taxation is reduced for working people and not through new programs, we can agree that this is creating basis for better economic growth. And better economic growth is more taxes getting to the common budget. And question about turning point to you, Mr. Mayor. What can be this turning point? I would like to relate to that because indeed these social segments that are a traditional electoral base for civic coalition, and I would like to highlight that I never been a part of a civic platform or any other group, but saying about campaign discussion, especially in such polarized conditions and such emotional conditions, makes many people expecting answers for difficult questions. It's not that you can now present 10 different solutions for all the problems, especially looking at the pace of this campaign, something that would change world to the better. It's better to stand still like a fool instead of running around like stupid. This quotation that I mentioned before. But the whole cycle of electoral promises basing on short-term satisfying certain groups of electorate, like free motorways and so on, that are either neutral or even harmful when it comes to development. If we just stand still and do nothing, it would be better. You don't need to be Stiglitz to understand how National Recovery Plan would help us. By just accepting it, we receive strategic effect. That's why I believe that this turning point of economic policy, it's not about arguing about 13.6 or 15% in a given category, but it should be on a strategic level, on value level. It would be sufficient to just change the direction of thinking in economic policy, not to add ideology to specific segments of economy. Accept the National Recovery Plan. For the start, it would suffice. I think it would be this turning point. I see that Mr. Domański would like to say something, but Maciej Herman, would you like maybe to add something? So maybe from other perspective, I am not a politician, but what I would like to see as a spectator from the side, I would like to see the parties that have chance for that, because I'm sure that not every party has chance for that because of lack of content or trust. But some parties have chance to properly plan this turn point, not on their own, but with proper representatives of different sectors of business, of medical care, education, I think. And I agree that it's one of the most crucial problems in Poland, not by themselves, but in work groups, create strong programs. We need to divide them into short-term, long-term programs, because I don't believe in the right content of politicians by their own. It's not their goal, in my opinion, for politicians to know everything. A good politician should collect a good a team of specialists that know about a given field, and that should be politicians' competence, and not knowing exactly everything about a given sector, like medical care or energetic sector. If it's done like that, indeed, then it can be a turning point. If not, we are still circling in the same place. Would you like to add something? I see there is another question. We don't have too much time, but you can formulate a question and perhaps we will know what summarization we can prepare. Earlier, you presented very well what I meant. The turning point is that politicians give themselves a break and just leave it for a time, and I buy it. But I think we need to have some leading thoughts in that 100 postulates for the economy. What is the philosophy? Well, more liberty for business. Yeah, that sounds good. Just communicate it well. Just last statement from everyone we need to summarize. I think that first of all, we need not to harm anymore, and then deal with things in a process when they appear. If we win the election, in democracy is about winning the election, we can have the best diagnosis and the best solutions which will never be used. And from the perspective of a coach, we can say that someone did not implement their postulates. So for me, the most important is to win the election and then not to spill it. One question. Gabriel Forum of Civic Development. Mr. Domański can relate the program is the cheapest. I would like to ask, maybe compared to different parties, couple of trillions more, but 120 trillion zlotys more than now. How would you like to function with the deficit of 280 trillions? It could be for you something to brag about, that it's the cheapest program. Perhaps this program would reduce the deficit, not increase it to 180 trillions. Very briefly, we need to finish. So first of all, it's basing on your numbers, so 120 trillions. So I was not basing on my own calculations. So we giving a response to this question so many times. We said about financing from national recovery plans, about reducing the costs of external debt. If we level our obligations level to the Czech Republic level, I'm not saying about any rocket science, but we will have savings from a budget perspective. I am sorry, but for the debt, public debt of Morawiecki government, I cannot be held responsible. I am responsible for financing, and 100 concrete points we presented weeks ago in Tarnow. I agree that not all groups are happy about that postulates. I will say more. Almost no one is happy because everyone would wish to see more in their own sector. But we have 100 specific points for 100 days. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We really need to finish. I'm really grateful to our panelists.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise Każdy wybór ma swoje konsekwencje.
Dziś na kazaniu o takich jak ty mówili, że to morderczynie.
A wiesz, że ta, która ci pomogła, trafi za kraty?
Trzeba mieć sumienie.
Jak mogłaś to zrobić własnej matce?
Aborcja to najgorsza zbrodnia.
Gdybym ja podjęła taką decyzję, nie byłoby cię tutaj.
Organy państwa nie będą przyglądać się temu obojętnie.
Życie i zdrowie kobiety jest najważniejsze.
Stop kryminalizacji aborcji.
Kobieta decyduje.
Dzień dobry, to znaczy myśmy się dzisiaj widzieli. Wie pan co, ja zmieniłem zdanie i chciałbym poprawić. Karty w urnie. Dobrze, to ja sobie poszukam.
Serio? Pan sobie poszuka? Nadchodzące wybory są zbyt ważne, by zostawić je bez kontroli. Dołącz do obywatelskiej kontroli wyborów. Zróbmy wybory bez piecu.
Jestem z zawodu lekarzem, zajmowałam się diagnostyką chorób nowotworowych.
W Białorusi zajmowałam się mikrobiologią i molekularną biologią.
Byłem nauczycielem szkoły podstawowej.
Naszym celem jest budowanie umiejętności, które są ważne na polskim rynku pracy.
Szybko nabierają takiej pewności siebie, bardzo szybko się uczą.
Wszystko możliwe, kiedy starasz się.